By saying that I will immediately turn bright red from my chest up to my ears, so I'm aware of that. Please don't make funny faces. What I want to start with is the definitions, or not definitions, but ideas that I came up with when they asked about innovation and leadership. And so I took it as the person. And I think an innovator is somebody who really values and embraces challenges and changes rather than running away from it. And as a leader, it's somebody who acts as a positive agent to facilitate that change. And I think that needs to be in a safe environment and supportive environment like what we have here, and we need to be able to replicate that in our schools as well. The project that I proposed and went on last year was in Australia. I spent a month in Victoria and a little bit of time in New South Wales visiting elementary schools that have kitchen gardens. And for those of you who don't know about kitchen gardens, it's a movement that's kind of catching on a little bit in America, but it's huge in Australia. It started about 11 years ago in one school in the inner city, and it's now nationwide in 180 schools, and it's government funded. So I worked with the Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Garden Foundation, and they were fantastic. They allowed me to visit 12 schools where I worked with garden specialists and kitchen specialists. They let me dig into the garden. They let me harvest with the kids. They let me plant. I'm not really a kitchen person, but they allowed me to use the knives and sharp objects and things and facilitate with the kids. And the main crux of this program is they want to change kids healthy, or they want to change the kids' culture about food and understand that healthy foods are available and that healthy food choices are there. And this is what I really wanted to bring back to my kids who are very, very sedentary. They're so used to processed foods. They have a very limited repertoire of what they eat, and they don't get outside. So I wanted to bring this back and combine it all in a way that I could set up a very small-scale kitchen garden program at my special ed school, which I've done. Limited success so far, but we're still building, and we hope to continue building in the next year or so. The impact on innovation that I found, it really jump-started me. I was having a couple of bad years in a row, and this gave me the jump that I needed to try something new and to try something dynamic and exciting with my kids. I wanted to get us out of the four walls of the classroom. For those of you who teach special ed and those of you who don't, those walls are so confining, and our kids can't sit for that long. They can't do pencil and paper tasks forever. They need to get outside and be physical and be active. So this was a great way for me to do something dynamic with the kids. It also really made me modify, and as a special ed teacher, I modify and adapt everything, every curriculum I find. But gardening with pitchforks isn't really what you want to do with kids who are at a really aggressive behavioral level or don't really understand safety. So I've really learned how to modify and adapt kitchen activities and gardening activities to bring it to a level that they understand, that they're interested in, that has meaning and purpose. Also, I've continued to work with the garden committee at the school. And because I'm in Chicago and we have a very, very limited growing season, we decided we wanted to extend our ability to grow things. So I wrote a grant that we just got in May, and we are, as of last week, we now have a greenhouse. So we can extend our, thank you. So we can go spring and fall and go a little bit longer. On a personal note, it was really important for me. I have a horrible relationship with food, other than chocolate. And I had an eating disorder for about 15 years. And so I've hated food, food aversions, avoided it. And this has it's made me appreciate it and want to teach the kids how to appreciate food as well. So big personal impact there. The impact on leadership, when I came back, I was so excited, as I'm sure most of you who were fellows were. You know, I was just jumping out of my skin with excitement. And I wanted to bring that back to my classroom. And not only my classroom, but the staff that I work with. And so I did a couple of PDs, and I did a couple of small going into their classrooms and working with their kids. So it really challenged me to create that buy-in, which I think is really necessary for something to go from something small to grow bigger and bigger. How I implemented this, when I came back last year, I found out that I was no longer a self-contained classroom teacher. I came back 2 days before school, and I was now the resource teacher. So it kind of changed my plans and shifted and changed. But it ended up being a really great change because instead of working with just my classroom, I was able to take 2 classrooms that I spent all Thursday afternoon, all Friday afternoon with, and then I did kitchen and gardening with double of what I thought I could impact. I'm also part of the garden committee. I guess you kind of have to be when that's your thing. And so we have an outdoor classroom, and I am kind of the new garden specialist. So I work with the committee, and we have done some presentations throughout the school to garner that interest. And then I worked with a colleague recently who is at another school who has the same interest, and we partnered with a local grant funding corporation, and they have allowed us to put together a study group grant that's district-wide, which we start on Tuesday. So I've gone from just my classroom, that seed has been planted, and it's grown and grown. So I'm really proud that I've been able to make a bigger impact than I originally thought. And these are just some of the pictures of my students. Looking at them, you'd never be able to tell that they have severe cognitive disabilities or severe behavioral issues. We spend time harvesting. We've tried composting. It hasn't been so successful yet. It's kind of stinky, and it hasn't really changed. But we try. You know, we've learned that failing is okay, and we'll continue to try again. The kids up at the top, they're out watering. They were saving milk cartons so that each kid in the school could have their own personal watering can. And the guys down at the bottom right-hand corner, that was our spring cleanup. We took all the BD kids out. They got the rakes and hose and the shovels, and they pulled all the dead stuff from last year. So the kids are involved in the planting, the harvesting, the maintenance, the cleanup, you name it. And then we go into the kitchen. Again, I'm not a cook. I'm not a chef, but I'm sharing and learning along with the kids, which is really fun and exciting. One of the things I learned from the Stephanie program was not to dummy down the recipes. You know, she really emphasized use things that you would use with adults. And so the kids have learned, I guess I can show you those recipes. The kids have learned how to make some of the most bizarre things. Veggie soup is pretty ordinary. Green tomato raspberry jam is not typical, but we had an abundance of green tomatoes, and what do you do with green tomatoes? So I found a recipe and we experimented, and it was a huge, huge success. We also made basil fettuccine, fresh, from scratch, which I had never ever done before. We went outside and harvested our basil, and then we came back in, made the dough, and then they were able to use the pasta maker. Caprese. Most kids aren't really huge fans of tomatoes. That went over really well. And squash blossom quesadillas, which again is an atypical recipe that you would use with 7 and 8-year-old kids. But we had the squash, we had the blossoms, and off we went. So let me go back for a second. Sorry, as I lost my train of thought there. All right, so the impact that I saw on my students, it was in different ways than I had really imagined. Increased interest and engagement in their physical activity. They were outside, they were moving along, they were so excited to use the wheelbarrow, they were so excited to learn how to use the rake and the hoe and the shovel. And I think those are things that our kids never ever get to do as urban city kids. They don't go to parks, they don't go outside to play. So this was really important. I also saw increased sustained attention, which is huge. My kids have an attention span of, some of them 5 to 10 seconds, which makes it really, really hard to plan for anything. They can attend through an entire garden activity or a cooking activity. One of the biggest things that I found was their understanding of delayed gratification. When you're cooking, you don't get it immediately. When you're planting, you don't get it immediately. So those were really, really important concepts that I didn't really anticipate would happen, but I was really pleased to see. And the school-wide impact, it did make an impact on the teachers in my class or my school. The aides would come up to me every Thursday and Friday and say, "Oh my gosh, what are you cooking? Can we have the recipe? Can you share it with us?" I'm now going to put it in 2 extra classrooms next year, and that, I guess, would be about it.
their child is going to order that if they're at a restaurant. But if they've made it, you know, would they try it? And I love the social aspect of the partnering with a teacher from another school, because community gardens are such a popular way to get to know your neighbors, and that's such a wonderful intro to that. Also, the whole issue of delayed gratification is so difficult right now with the instantaneous digital everything that we love, and so teaching music lessons, for instance, is a real challenge because they can get excitement so much more quickly somewhere else. So I'd love to hear you talk more about that.
Julie? I thought you were spot on with the leadership component of this exercise, and I really liked how you did the district-wide study, and that you led that forward. And for me, that was just spot on with what everything that we're trying to accomplish here is looking at innovation, yes, and then what do you do with that innovation once it's occurred, and use leadership to promote that in many other ways. Robert?
First of all, I just want to thank you for trusting us enough to share your own personal challenges with food. And I love the way you connected that to the challenges the students are facing with food, which are different, but together I love that statement you made about that you're growing and learning together, because that is so powerful for the kids. And then just a little side thing I was wondering, I'd like to see if you've ever thought about, as you expand, hopefully, this program, what jumped to mind was creating a cookbook, having the kids create a cookbook based on these recipes that you are showing and more. So,
Lisa? I don't think you had a chance to talk about the impact on kids' communication skills, and I would be interested in hearing more about that.
Dan?
So fried green tomatoes is the answer to what you're saying. I'm just wondering, if you were to become a principal, how would you apply what you learned as a teacher as a principal?
Rach?
As the teacher of an autistic child that only ate cheese puffs, and I know you know how that goes, and trying all those different foods and trying to get parents to help at home with those healthy options. So, you know, were they willing to take recipes? Did your families buy in, or since the kids had cooked something, were they willing to try it again at home? I'm just curious if any of it transferred.
Karen?
That's where I was wondering what the parents have learned